With his own diary tapes and other unique recordings, former Cabinet Minister Tony Benn remembers Labour's last Prime Minister, Jim Callaghan.
When Harold Wilson resigned as Prime Minister, the party had to elect a new leader, and a number of us, including myself, stood as leader of the party, and Jim Callaghan, of course, won. And although I disagreed with him on many matters, I was pleased that he was there. He reappointed me as Energy Secretary, and I went over to see him at number 10 Downing Street to talk about the future of our work together. Monday, the 12th of April. I had a message to come over and see Jim Callaghan. He said, your officials say that you spend too much time on home policy work and too little on departmental work. Well, I said, that's astonishing. I never get to bed till about 2 or 3 in the morning. He said, well, what are you working at? Well, I said, I'm doing my box and thinking about some of these basic questions. Well, he said, I just tell you frankly, they say that you don't take an interest in energy. So that's interesting, because that is the network at work. Well, he said, on economic committees, I might put you on an economic committee, but they say that you write down everything that's said, and it's very secret, and they're afraid you're going to leak. So I said, well, that is an amazing thing to say, because I do not leak. I make speeches and put out press releases. That makes me out as a security risk. Well, he said, not a security risk, but that you just talk to people. So I said, well, I don't do that, but still, it's a very interesting piece of information to have. Very interesting piece of information to have. And I'm grateful to you for telling me, because I'm really now learning what probably Harold Wilson was thinking all the time. So then he said, well, you see, what they think you're doing, you're a critic of government policy, and I'd like to integrate you into the government, but they think you're waiting for the whole thing to collapse, and then you're going to march in with the shop stewards. So I said, well, that honestly shows how little the establishment understands the British people, or understands me, for that matter. Well, Jim said, you've got great ability. I think you could be one of the greatest leaders this country's ever had. But I'm not sure that you're not aiming to go out and be a darling of the left. I could be a very hard man. And I shall call you in one day, and maybe if it goes wrong, and I'll sack you. And I said, well, if you do, I shan't complain. The next speech I shall make is calling on the movement to support the Prime Minister. And then you'll regret what you've done. So he laughed. And I felt really rather sentimentally disposed. I said to him, if this were a court of chivalry, I'd pledge you my fee for whatever you do. I said, I've never voted for you for anything, Jim, but I'm just so glad you're there instead of Harold Wilson. I always supported him. I couldn't stand him. And he said, well, come and see me whenever you want to. And so I will.
What about the nature of the problem of the Labour Party? Aren't you having to look over your left shoulder rather a lot?
Well, let me say that when the Labour Party looks at who I would be replaced by, they come flocking to me in droves and say, please don't resign. I'm there to do the job of leading the government. If people don't wish to support me, well, then at that stage I go.
You see no danger at all that your left wing might at some stage be moved to abstain or to vote against you on a matter of great confidence where you would have to resign?
And replace me by the present leader of the opposition?
He's a very nice guy, personally. A supreme politician. And just at this moment, he's very skillful. He's handling me very skillfully, quite frankly, because I am somebody who needs to be not exactly appreciated, but at least not thought of as a disruptive force. And I said to him, look, I'm not sitting waiting for the revolution and marching on London with the troops. I said, I live in the naive hope that one day you'll accept the policies that I advocate. And he said, well, when they make sense, I will. So I said, well, that's fine. That's all I ask. And that spirit I left, and I was really so pleased by it. I got out my tape recorder and dictated it, but there were 1 or 2 lessons to learn from it. First of all, I must sound more constructive and not sound destructive. I must not give the impression that I'm just about to resign, which I have no intention whatever of doing. And I must perhaps be careful about writing everything down. Maybe that is an embarrassment. I don't know. Makes people distrust me. I better just accept that, like taking my camera to the cabinet, which nobody really wanted me to do, that I better just try and remember it, and it'll be a nuisance. But I think that's really what I'll have to do.
although I enjoyed very good personal relations with Jim, there were real problems. I was on the National Executive Committee, elected by conference, and a member of the Cabinet, reappointed by him, and this posed problems. For example, quite early on, we had a debate on the National Executive about the public expenditure cuts, and I abstained. And my duty as a member of the Cabinet, he would have thought, was to support him. So I went to see him again, and this was the first rather sharper exchange I had with him after he moved into number 10 Downing Street.
Thursday, the 29th of April, 1976. The front door bell rang at 7, and it was a journalist. The Daily Express, as I discovered when I got into the office, had a huge banner headline, "Benn rats on the Cabinet," with the account of the abstention. And I must admit it worried me, because I thought, oh God, what an awful start with Jim, with whom I was establishing a good relationship. Anyway, at about 20 to 5, I went in to see Jim. He was sitting in his room. I sat down, and I said, "Thank you for seeing me. I appreciate it. I think probably I got it wrong yesterday, but before you comment, can I tell you what happened? I didn't vote. I probably was wrong, but I tell you what my philosophy is, that you've got to allow the executive to express a view, and it doesn't really help to bully them because we don't like it." Well, Jim said, "I'm glad you came to see me. If you hadn't done it, I'd have asked you to come and see me. We've got to get this right, you know. I'll be emotional about it or anything, but I said, he said, we can't have this, you know, you can't have this. You've either got to be with the executive or the government. You may have to choose." Well, I said, "I hope it doesn't come to that." He said, "Well, there are 5 of us on the executive. I think we should meet." So I said, "Yes, that's very good. I'll put in a paper if you like." "No," he said, "don't do that. That'd be most unwise. Absolutely secret. I told you." So we're going to meet. It's Fred Mulley, Shirley Williams, Jim Callaghan, Michael Foote, and myself. I said, "There were more." He said, "Yes, well, some went, some Harold got rid of, and I had to end Barbara's career. And Harold used to keep a big majority in order to have a tame vote there. I haven't got it there now. There are certainly 3 of them there, continual contact with the communists. I know that everything that goes on that executive goes straight back to King Street. I have ways of knowing." And he was saying, in effect, we tap their telephones, or we tap the telephones of the Communist Party headquarters, and this is what we hear. Well, it was more pleasant than with Wilson, because I have more time for him, but there you are. I appreciate, I said, the way you've handled the situation, problem created by my views.
At the 1976 party conference, his first as Prime Minister, there was a lot of criticism of the policies that were being pursued, and Jim's speech didn't go down all that well. And afterwards, I went to have a talk to him about it. I asked for 5 minutes and stayed for an hour and a half. And it revealed another side of Jim's character, very good at handling people, and also very relaxed. And it was that sort of relationship between us that made even our conflicts quite tolerable to live with.
One way or another, the government's had a rather uncomfortable day. They've been thoroughly roughed up about their housing policy on Europe, health and child benefits. And Mr. Callaghan had to sit poker-faced on the platform with all his extra cares about the economy in the background, taking it all in.
This afternoon, Mr. Tony Benn, the man the left still regard as their leader, made a speech which contained no disloyal word, but made clear what he thinks the Labour Party should be doing at this critical time.
Thursday, October the 7th. At 5:30, I went over to number 10 for the meeting with the miners about earlier retirement. Well, I had said before I went to number 10, I'd like very much to have 5 minutes with the Prime Minister, if that's possible. So Jim said, "You want to have a word with me?" So I said, "Well, if you've got a moment." So he said, "Well, come back in here." So we sat in the cabinet room, I suppose from 6:20 till 8:20, about an hour and a quarter, had a lovely talk. We came on to the conference. He said, "Now, I thought the conference was awful. I thought it was sour, I thought it was bitter." And he said, "I had a lot of letters about your behavior on television sitting there during my speech." But I said, "Jim, it would be very nice every morning if I woke up and found that everything I did was sweet and reasonable and sensible like Shirley Williams, but it isn't like that." But I said, "It's pretty rough, you know." And even the Financial Times printed a picture of Michael and myself side by side, looking glum and saying 2 unenthusiastic members of the cabinet during the Prime Minister's speech. I said, we weren't even sitting next to each other during your speech. Oh, he said, I didn't notice that. Well, I said, there's an apology in today's Financial Times. He said, I think conference lost us the election. He said, I can see you as leader of the party in opposition, and 10 years in opposition you'd be. Well, I said, I'll never be leader of the party. Oh, yes, you might, and I'm trying to give you a fair due. Well, I said, I know that. But the PLP, as at present constituted, always go somebody else. I'm not going to wreck my life by ambition, I said. Then he said, we really got down to gossiping by this stage. He said, oh, yes, he said, I tell you a thing about Harold. When we were at the summit, just before he retired, he said, Aldo Moro, the Italian Prime Minister, was delivering a 17-page written speech on the international monetary system. And he said Harold took one earphone off his ear, because we were both sitting with our earphones on, and I took the one off my good ear, and Harold leaned over to me and said, when I go, Jim, shall I take the Garter, the OM, or go to the Lords? And so Jim said, I said to him what I always say in those circumstances, what would you like to do for yourself? So he said, I think I'll take the Garter. And he did, he said. Well, I said, as a matter of fact, old Clem took all three. He took a Garter, the OM, and the Oldham. Yes, said Jim. I remember in '55 when he came to the Shadow Cabinet and said, just to let you know, I'm resigning. And he said, shall I take an Oldham? It's up to you. And Edith Summerscott said, of course you must take it, Clem. Right, I'll take it. And he took it. It was a very funny, typical story. Well, what else did he say? I don't know. It's almost taken an hour to describe it. It's a summary of the whole thing. So I went off. It was very friendly, I must say, and I enjoyed it very much. And he needs me now. He needs me, and I need him, too, in a way. But I don't think he could get rid of me now, and I mustn't be provocative about it. I must just sit quietly. So then, about 7:45, I came home feeling immensely cheerful and scribbling little notes all the time in my notebook, so I didn't forget a word that was said.
Despite all he'd said about Clem and Harold, of course, Jim took a peerage and became a Knight of the Garter after he retired. But that mustn't obscure the fact that he was a very matey chap. And at the Durham Miners' Gala in 1978, they always have a dinner. And until Neil Kinnock stopped going, the leader of the party was always there. And it was the custom to sing songs. And I put my tape recorder on the table after the dinner, and Jim sang a song which aroused enormous goodwill. I am the man, the very fat man who waters the workers' beer, and it showed him in a very human light, which is the way most of us would like to remember him.
There's a song you all know well, the man that waters the workers' beer. That's what I do. Now, when I make the workers' beer, I put 6 strychnine, some methylated spirits, and a drop of paraffine. But since the brews are terribly strong,